Hey guys, welcome to TST Garage. I'm Bart, and in this episode I have a GSX-8S in the shop with me. I will be performing the installation of our V1 intake system that you see in front of me. On this particular bike, we've already done several different full exhausts. We've come up with flash programs for the flash tuning of the ECU on this bike. And now we're taking the performance upgrades further by taking care of the intake side. This bike has a very funky intake tract. It's got a very, very long airbox, showing us that the acoustics of this system are meant for like really mid-range and low power. We wanted to extend the upper performance of this bike and try and shift the entire torque and horsepower curves upwards. And our engineering staff did just that. Came up with two different length stacks that mount to the airbox with ease, and we're replacing the intake cap on top of the filter with an open version that you see here. Everything's direct bolt-on, very easy to install. I will show you guys exactly how that's done in just a moment. A little note about performance. I can't cite any particular number at this point. This is an installation video. We continue polishing our products, and over time, we will have subsequent versions of this. So for the most complete data that is current, please see our website, tstindustries.com. Gravitate towards the GSX-8S page, open the page, the product page for this particular kit, and you'll be presented with the dyno graphs as we found on our dyno and comparisons on other different exhausts with this kit. You'll get the most comprehensive data there, so please look there, and we'll just take care of the installation here. So you can probably tell I'm very, very excited to get this on. It makes the bike work a lot better with me as a rider. It really does extend that mid-range and upper performance. You feel it right from like 5,500 RPMs. It's just a smack difference, and it just continues pulling. I'm really proud of this product. It's really, really good extension of the performance of this bike, and it's not like race gas where you have to keep paying for it. You pay for it once, and it doesn't break your pocket. You install it, and you're good to go. Now, this does change the intake characteristics and the volumetric efficiency of this engine. So there will be something you will have to do about fueling on this bike. Now, I always recommend going to the dyno and tuning for your particular setup. Now, not everybody can do that, so we've set up several different flash programs that we will have for this system with different exhausts that will be available on our website, tstindustries.com. We will have a little note in the product page for this product for you guys to be able to access the appropriate flash right away. So it will be a buy together sort of a setup. If you do choose our flash program, you will need to remove your ECU and send it to us. We will flash it and send it back to you, and that'll be that. Now, I am very excited to get this on there and demonstrate the ease of installation and what it sounds like, because it does also make a really, really awesome growly noise once you install these parts. So let's make me happy. Let's get some tools and let's rip into this thing. Let's begin the process by removing the seats. I'll be using a 5mm Allen to remove the driver's seat. Now we hop to the front of the tank here. There are two push pins holding this center tank fairing in place. We're going to push the centers in on those, and that unlocks them. Push the center on each of these. That causes them to unlock, and you can push the whole thing forward and remove it. Now we go back to our 5mm Allen. I'm going to remove this screw here. One additional black head screw on top here. Switch to a 4mm Allen. Remove this screw here, right up above the head. And then I'm going to grab a small flathead screwdriver, pop out the head on the push pin right in this area on the inside, just above the radiator. And that will be the final fastener for this fairing. This is the fastener I'm talking about. There's only one like it in this area, so you can't miss it. In its locked state, it looks like this. Pop up the head, take it out, good to go. I'm going to repeat the steps on the other side of the bike. Now both of these fairings are free to come out. There is a mushroom head fastener strip right about here, so we need to pry up on this, disengage that strip. It comes off pretty easy. Once this is off the bike, we push forward to clear tab and window features up by the radiator. We have these tabs here with rubber covers on them. They do tab into these windows here. Once you push that forward, it clears. We can remove it. Repeat on right side. And now we have access to the fasteners that hold our tank on. The next thing to come out will be the tank. We are now going to grab a 10mm socket, remove the forward bolt that holds the tank onto the frame. Let's see if the tank will swivel up. Okay, it swivels just fine. So we're going to pull it up and gain access to all the hoses. We need to remove the aerator hose, the overflow hose. Now with the tank rotated up, we're going to have to first disconnect the breather and overflow hoses. Mine come off really easy at the moment because we've been taking them off and putting them on very often recently. Yours will likely be stuck on. You may need to do it with a set of pliers. All right, once those hoses come off, now we have a little bit more range here. I'm gonna unplug the fuel sender and pump connector, and finally the fuel line. First, the orange clip needs to come down to expose the tab windows, and then you press the tabs in, and that disengages the lock, permitting you to withdraw that fuel line. And I do have some fuel coming out of there, so I'm going to put a rag around it so it doesn't drip down on the bike. Now the tank is disconnected from hoses and connectors. Let's grab a 5mm Allen and remove the tank bracket from the subframe. I'm going to be able to take this tank off completely with its bracket, and we have access. Now let's remove this lower cover. To do that, we will push in the centers of these fasteners and remove them. And then there will be two other fasteners, one up front here and one on the matching location on the other side. And now push down. This tab clears out and the whole thing pops out. We can remove it. Now let's hop up top. All right, let's go ahead and disconnect the air temperature sensor from the airbox. Here you notice we have a cap. We've eliminated the AIS components on this bike. The head has caps on it. There's no AIS system, pair system, so there's no hose here. If your bike still has the hose here, it'll be disconnected and then reconnected in the reassembly. Let's go ahead and remove the battery. Also going to take this rubber part that sits below the battery. It'll enable us access to these two 10mm screws that we will need to remove. Let's go ahead and take the airbox lid fasteners off, two up here and two down here. Those will be tough to see in our video, but there are only two more fasteners that look exactly like this down here. We're going to grab ourselves a longer reach Phillips and remove those. Get the lid out. The lid will not be reused with our new system, but we do still need the screws because those will complete our assembly of our new lid. So let's hang on to those. Take the filter out. Now, the airbox is essentially loose with the exception of these two 10mm head screws. So let's get those guys out now. We're loose here. Now, there is a uniclamp, which means there are two clamps with a rod and a long screw holding the funnels onto the intake of this bike. So we will need to get in here, grab a 3mm Allen. We're going to loosen this clamp. So the idea is to loosen the clamp enough so that both of the clamping surfaces are completely unlocked from the intake. And now I will wiggle this until it releases and I can scooch it forward. The other hose that goes to the bottom of the airbox just popped off. So during reassembly, we will have to pop this on its appropriate spot. Now, I'm gonna bring this up here, take the uniclamp off so that I don't damage it in the process here. Now we have the job of extracting this airbox from within the confines here. We do have a giant wiring loom on this side, smaller on this side. There are some tabs here. We need to make sure that we absolutely do not damage any of the wires within this loom. So you don't want to keep tearing up against the surfaces of this loom or the other side. So be very gentle there. We'll need to wiggle and rotate until we release all of our tab surfaces. So there's a tab right here, somewhere mid-span, forward aft of the opening in the top. Once that clears out of that loom, I'm able to rotate and clear the other side around the loom. And once those tabs clear, this kind of just comes out. Still needs a little bit of a rotate here. These are the tabs that pose the most challenge getting out of there. So if you're stuck on the way out, make sure you're keeping mindful of where these are falling in there and interfering. As soon as you clear them, all of this does come out. So the key to getting it out nice and smooth and without too much trouble is to just keep making sure that they're clear on the way out. Now, at this point, we'll have to remove these clamps, and these are one-time use clamps. I've been successful at prying up away on here and bending out the little tabs that lock in there, and then this whole thing pops off. Now I've already disturbed ours, so ours are very easy to pop off at this point. Yours may be a little bit more challenging, so you may have to work on it a little bit more. These have been reused for the purpose of demonstration here, but I essentially took the same steps. It just took me a little bit longer when I originally popped them off. Now, these guys are free to come out. They are rubber. We can grasp them, deform them, and basically rotate as we take them out, and that makes it nice and easy here, or as easy as it'll be. On the inside, I'm basically collapsing the bell shape in on itself so that I can actually clear it out. Show you real quick what that means. Collapsing it on the inside like that to make the bell shape as small or smaller than the outer diameter here. Repeat the procedure with the number 1 cylinder. All right, now all the parts are out and we are ready to start the assembly of the TST components on here and then reassembly onto the bike. Let's quickly define a few things here and then we'll move forward. On the left side of the bike, you have cylinder 1. On the right side, you have cylinder 2. Cylinder 1 receives the longer and curved stack, whereas cylinder 2 will receive the shorter version, and that's from the inside. Our stacks do come disassembled. This is the outer piece. It's identical on both sides. The inside's a little bit different. It'll go in like this. We will start the thread against the inner funnel. Once the thread is successfully started and we get close to mating this surface on this surface, we will pop it in and then finish off that thread. Now, this material is not rubber like the OEM sets are, so it doesn't offer as much flex. We need to be very careful in not flexing these little grippy teeth too much. You can damage them, they can come off. We don't want to do that, so please handle these with care. Also, the outer surfaces where we will be mating them against OEM parts, they do have a little bit of friction, so to mitigate that friction, we will be using a little bit of lithium grease. I like using lithium grease because it's not petroleum based and it doesn't absorb into the nylon material that we use to make these parts out of, and that's good for us. We do not want that to absorb. I'm going to get a little bit of this grease on the bores of the intake side of the airbox. I'll make this spin a little nicer in there, a little bit less friction. I'm also going to dab a little bit on the threads. That'll help us engage the threads a little bit nicer. This nylon on nylon thread is a little bit rough and it takes finesse. Predominantly in the mating procedure. So the outer thread of this component mating into the inner thread of its receiving part is the tricky part here. We need to make sure that we do not cross thread it. And this is pretty easy to cross thread. So you will need to make sure that the feeling of the threads coming together is uniform, meaning from start to finish, you will have approximately the same amount of friction. If you encounter any friction beyond that, please back it off and make sure you're not cross-threading it. So first, let's mate the threads entirely out of the airbox. This way you can get a feel for just how much friction there should be in the system. And after we've done that, we will take it off, take it apart, and then do the same thing, mate it on the airbox. So like I said, the curved guy goes on cylinder 1 on the left side. Let's go ahead and do that. This is a tricky portion here. It's very difficult to see exactly what you're doing, and it's difficult to get it exactly on axis. So it's very important that you are careful with this step, making sure that you are patient. Do not force the threads to come together. All right, I have success here. Let me get this surface here, top of the grippy teeth close to our expansion portion of this intake tube, and then I'm going to pop it on. Once it makes that snapping sound, it's still able to rotate. It's just going to be a little bit tighter to rotate it, but we are close to bottom anyway. So let's go ahead and get this tight on here. Now on the inside, what I'm doing is keeping this exit, or actually I would say entrance to the intake, away from the walls. I want it to point that way as much as possible, not this way and not into the wall. Don't want to make contact with the walls. So I will be holding it in place as I turn the outer portion to full bottom out. Now how do we know this is fully bottomed out? Well, it gets really tight, whereas before it was spinning freely. And then we only have a tiny, tiny little gap between the top and bottom portion. And now this side is done. And we will continue to the second funnel. All right, let's repeat the steps for this side. All right, we're looking good here. Our kit comes with a band clamp for each one of these. I'm gonna have to disassemble it like so, and then reassemble it here to pressurize this area against the airbox. I'm gonna keep my fastener on the bottom portion, like I'm showing here. Once this is installed, this fastener's facing the bottom. Actually, on the inboard side, might be even better. We'll have less likelihood of interference with other components here on this side. As I get this down to the point where there's a little bit of friction in it, I'll make sure that I have it up against the rim and then just cinch it down a little bit. You do not want to over tighten this. It may strain the material that these things are made of. So let's just give it a little bit of friction, test it out. If it's not rotating, that's it. Don't need to go any further than that. Let's see if I could just plop it over, and yes, I can. So there's really no need to disassemble the clamp. Slip it on and start tightening. Just please make sure that the access to this hose fitting here is unobstructed by these guys. Okay, that's good to go. Let's try to get the airbox in first. This is the way it mounts. Lift it up, rotate it clockwise, get the bottom portion in, and then start rotating until we get this tab here. We'll have to jimmy that underneath. There is a plastic piece, this shroud here, that covers the subframe. That does need to be pushed out as we get this closer. All right. Nice and simple. All right. So on the way back in is a lot simpler than on the way out. I'm going to get the uniclamp. The screw head was on the left side of the bike, so that's where we're going to position it. I'm going to be very careful not to distort our grippy teeth. All right, still nice and loose. Now I'm going to start bringing it into position and start mating it onto the intake. We also have to still attach this hose to the bottom fitting here, and that's only possible when we get closer with the whole setup. So I will be doing all of that at the same time. On the inside of our stacks, there is a small relief cut into the inside of these gripper teeth, and that meets a little ridge on each one of the intake areas on the throttle body. Just making sure I don't have any schmutz laying around still in there. This way we don't suck up any nasties into the motor when we turn it on. All right, let's now bring it into position. Still catching one of the tabs on the giant harness here. Let me clear that through. Okay, we're good here. On this side, I'm catching one of these shrouds. I'm gonna pull it away. Okay, now I have enough space here to engage my hose onto the fitting. And then finally start getting my stacks onto the clamp here. believe this hose does have to come up and over the uniclamp and then down under onto that fitting. Yes, let's do that. That is a much better routing, and it doesn't interfere with my uniclamp and connection means here. So yes, that big breather hose that goes to the airbox from the crankcase does go on top of the top bar of the uniclamp. And now my stacks are about to pop on. All right, stacks have popped on. The ridge did catch into the relief, so I am going to replace these screws here in the aft section. Let's make this assembly self-captive. Now I'm going to grab that 3mm Allen that I was using to unlock on the uniclamp, and I'm going to go backwards and tighten it this time to make sure that we are actually on the clamping surface with the clamp and we're not trying to clamp down on the exterior of the grippy teeth. And again, same requirement as on the clamps on the airbox side. Want to provide friction, but do not over tighten, do not stress the material. All right, that's looking good. Replace our temperature sensor. Replace the filter. Here we're showing the OEM filter. We did remove the polyester blanket layer from this thing. We did measure output with this filter and also with our own aftermarket filter that we made for this bike. Aftermarket filters do provide a little bit extra performance, but they're really not that big of a deal. So we're going to continue using the OEM one. Now we do have our TST Industries WORX lid here. It does replace this cowl head with horns. It's really just one way to put it on, so I'm gonna put it on here, and then we use the screws that we took out from the OEM setup. It's important to get all 4 screws started on their threads before using a tool and tightening things down. All right, everything past this point is the reverse order of disassembly. So I will skip the commentary and just perform the steps unless there is an unusual tip that I need to provide. All right, that's pretty much it. Let's fire it up. All right, everything's working as expected. Everything's good. I'm really pleased with this process. I've been in this bike many times during our installation process videos, so I know it really well. It takes me roughly a half hour to perform this install. If you haven't been in and out of there many times, it may take you 45 minutes to an hour, something like that. We only use basic tools as you saw, And the process is fairly straightforward. Now, again, like I mentioned in the intro, the actual performance upgrade claims are mentioned and detailed in our product page for the kit. I invite you to check that out at tstindustries.com. Do not cite it here because we do keep improving our packages, and every couple months we will probably make an improvement and the newest one will be posted, so you can get the details there. We've already upgraded the cosmetics of this bike. We gave it crash protection. We've upgraded the ergonomics, and now we have a wild extension to the performance part. So I hope you like what you see here. If you do, check out tstindustries.com. We have these parts ready to go. We have other parts for this bike and other bikes you may have in your stable. So check us out. Give me a comment. I always like hearing from you guys. Let me know if we did good. If not, give us some constructive criticism. The only way for us to get better at what we do is to hear from you what you would like to see done better. Thank you for watching. I'm done here. See you later.